good to have you back. First we have Danny. All right, Danny, do you attend the last section assignment?
Good afternoon.
Huh?
Good afternoon, sir. I did,
Yeah,
yes.
good afternoon.
I added you as a collaborator. I pushed
Oh,
it to
oh,
GitHub.
oh. I didn't get a notification. I'll check. All right. So I
Okay,
think
sir.
we'll move on this class because of the time. So today we'll be moving into something more serious and advanced called classes, which was under the OOP, object-oriented programming. The classes, shifting of classes to get objects and arrays, and asynchronous programming. So from the word asynchronous, that means definitely we have synchronous, right? We'll discuss that. So our agenda for today, we'll discuss about the classes, the setting of classes, and asynchronous programming. So what is a class? There comes the question. In our previous class, we discussed about object and arrays, right? And I said that object key value pairs, which you can use to call an entity, right? Something, an object. A human can be an object, person can be an object, a car can be an object, right? And you can get the properties of each of those cars and their values. And with this color, we can have maybe a blue, the color of the car to be a property which can provide maybe the model and the make. So this class is kind of higher, right? I'll call it higher because this is just kind of creating a blueprint of that object. It's not actually the object, but it sounds like a blueprint, right? So for instance, we have so many cars, they are modern, let's assume. And every car, definitely, or most cars, always have four tires, one of their features. They always have four tires, they always have engine, they always have there's something very common among them, right? There must be mirrors, right? There must be a mirror, there must be a steering, those similar things. But the type of those things might differ. Maybe when it comes to a tire wheel, this particular car may have a different wheel. Right? So this class can help us to find something that can be useful for all entire cars. So inside this class car, we can then be creating each of the car objects we want. We don't have to repeat ourselves. So that means when we are calling, since we know that all cars have four tires, we can just create a class of it. Whenever you're creating an object of any particular car, let's say Toyota Camry, you just have to extend or to inherit a parent class. So let's use definitely all cars has a tire of four tires. So I don't have to come to my object and start defining it again. So you can see that this class is very, very versatile and very broad. That it can help you manage a very large system without repeating yourself. Most things we are using, most method, whenever you hear method, they're actually from a class. So there's a class that holds all of them, that we have parameters and we have methods. So we'll be discussing on that today. So the class is a blueprint for creating objects, which is what I just explained now. It defines the property. There will be a property, the variables, which I just said, just like we have a name and an age. These are variables, and also have a method, which is like a function, right? So also discuss that. So creating an object. So this is actually means, okay, before then, this is how we create a class. So use the class keyword. We use the class keyword, is a keyword, right? Then you specify the name of that class. Note, for every class, the first letter must be capitalized. Please note that that's how you differentiate being a class and an object. Its first letter must be capitalized. You must capitalize it, every class. First word. All right. Then open this, and this can define your properties, and you can also define a method. So this creating an object is actually instantiating from a class. It's just like from this person, Okay, let me still use this code to explain what I just explained before. So a person, every person has a name and has the age, right? Which is correct. So let's assume that I want to now create an object of myself from this person. Since I know definitely I must have a name and I must have a age. I don't have to come here to start creating an object of myself. All I have to do here is to instantiate from this class. All right, so I can give it a variable, my own variable, and instantiate it. You can this new one, meaning create a new separate object from this class person. That's what you are doing. From this class, create an object for me. The object becomes a user. So this user cannot access the property of name. So I cannot provide my name is Enoch and the age is maybe 25. So create for Danny. I don't have to create another object. I can still from here create another object, instantiate another object. I can say user2 from the same new person and give a name Danny, age maybe 27. I can also do the same thing, maybe user3, new person, and instantiate this and just say name Mario, age maybe 27 or 28, whatever value you want to provide. Alright, so that is how this object and object works. So you can start the class actually a blueprint holding inside this class. You can create so many objects. That is the essence. On one class, so many objects can be produced. Just like from car, there are so many cars, thousands, many model and different makes of cars, so many. So from one car or the same thing from a person, we have over 10 billion humans on Earth, right? So from this one class, I can actually create up to 1 billion objects of a person that has a name and an age. That is what is helping us to do. So it saves us the time from creating and updating this over and over. All right, so we have done this. So another important thing is the constructor. So a constructor is a special function. So we have spoken what function is earlier. I say functions are reusable block of code. All right, you can use it over and over and again. So a constructor is a special function inside a class that runs automatically when you create a new object. So it only runs when you create a new object, right? It's just making our work easier. So we'll show you how it works. It's a job. Each job is simple: initialize, setup, and the starting values of an object. So I'll explain this with the code. All right. So just instead of you trying to initialize it yourself, you already have a constructor that is doing it. So whenever you create a new object, the constructor will just initialize with the value you are giving. So when you create an object, instead of manually assigning, so this is what I'm just explaining here. So when you create an object, instead of you manually assigning value one by one, the constructor does it immediately. So let's see how this constructor works. So you can see it has the keyword constructor inside the class. So this is the same thing we did before on the person. So you're creating another class, the name and age. So you can see this one. When I created the name and the age, I manually access the property by saying .name and .age, but constructor help us not to repeat this. To say the constructor already defined the property here, the name to be a string. This is TypeScript, so you must indicate that data type. But the age will be holding a number. And use the keyword constructor. It must be below. It must be below, not above. Right, because you're accessing this. They will now give these parameters. These are parameters, all right? So the name will still be a string and the age will still be a number. And use this keyword this to reassign it to this parameter we have set. We say this parameter here, reassign it to be the same thing with this property we've created here, name and the age. That means whenever I am instantiating this class, I just have to provide the values or the arguments inside this class as a function, like a function. All right. So you can see here before this time, when I created a person class, I use a person class. I'm not able to add any parameter inside this parenthesis like a function. This is a class, right? But For the essence of constructor, instead of me accessing the name and the age, I already define it in my constructor, say the name and the age. So I can just pass in Enoch and my age. So instead of for that, from this initialization or instantiating of this, you just assign the values, right, to the properties, which is what the constructor is helping us to do. So without constructor, this is manual way, all right, what I just shared before. Then you can see this is the user. I just pass in like a value that as if I'm passing to a function that has an argument, right? A function with parameters, right? This is actually what it serves. I can just pass in like this name, this first one will stand for this one will stand for this one. If I have more properties, I keep adding them, right? For more, I keep adding them, I keep adding them. It's manually, I just have to, after inserting this, I have to call it one after the other. So I will there are 10 in number. I will have to do this user.name, user.age, maybe height, and so on. I keep repeating it over and over. You can see how stressful it is. But I wish I use a constructor. Instead of doing this, inside this parameter as an argument, I'll just pass in my name, adding an age, and the rest. Look at this constructor again. Excuse me for a minute. So that is for the constructor. So look at it again. You use the keyword constructor, open the parentheses, just like a function, as if you are creating a function, but this constructor must be a keyword, right? You must write it constructor to create, and it must be inside the class, not outside, inside. So this is just a keyword that enables us reassign this. I reassign this parameter to the property. So we say reference this parameter and reassign it with this public property. So we'll come to that selection. All right, so let's go ahead. So access modifiers. This is something that makes class very, very, very interesting, right? The security part of it. So we have the modifiers like the public, the private, and the protected. So I can actually define all these properties, and I will define how strict I want it to be. That if I define this to be public, it means anywhere around my code I can access it. That's what it means by being public, accessible everywhere. All right. So if I say private, only inside the class. So if I say this is private, only within this class will I access name. Something like this. So if I say this is private, only within this code, line of code, will I access name. I can't access it outside anymore. That is what it means. So if I call user.name outside, it won't work. I won't be able to access it outside. If it's private, I only access it inside. Then when it's protected, it means inside the class and subclasses. That means you can work when it's being protected. It works only on this class and any class that is inheriting this subclass. So we see that show up the inheritance. That is it. So we have for the modifiers, the public can be a public, accessible everywhere. It can be private, accessible only inside the class, and it can be protected inside class plus this class that's inheriting the subclass, superclass. Right. So this is access modifiers. So let's see how it works. So you define it by a keyword, either the public, private, or protected, any of them, at the beginning of before the property. Even for the method, you still do the same thing. If you want it to be private or public or protected. So this helps us protect our code. Right. Help us protect. Like there's something I saw. I think Mr. Mero posted that about Basel, saying that they had their public something environment variable. Is exactly what is happening, right? So most times those public is being written to be public. That means anybody around that person can access the code, can have access to it. But how which is private is only within that class they have defined. All right. So I'm just using that as an illustration. But what they did is ENV environment, right? So that is another different topic entirely. All right. So methods in classes. So this method also serves as functions. I hope we are getting what I'm explaining. So if Danny, if any points you are confused, always run me back so I can explain. I don't run too fast because each one is built upon each, like a block. All right. So method in class is the same thing like function. So use a double parenthesis. Define what is it returning. So this is TypeScript for you. So you are returning a string, and you open your libres. All right, I must return a string. So this is it. So I can say a public name. This is I've defined a parameter here, public name, and I'm creating a function under here, and I'll just return. So this function is just like, let's go back to our car illustration. So these properties can serve like, let's say, a color. You say blue, just like a variable. You say the make, you give me the make, the model. It's kind of straightforward. Then the method here, the function can be how the car move, right? In ignition, how you turn it up can be a function that if you click on function on, maybe switch on the car, it starts. It will start the engine. Many process, there are many things that will definitely happen before it starts. So they will write the function inside here. So many things will happen before that car will start behind the scene. So those code will be written inside. So whenever that function is called, the car starts. All right. So and so on and so forth. Even like the brake, a function brake. Whenever you hold the brake, something happens, the car stops. It reduces acceleration. And so these are the functions. This is how you take, even in human being, right? Maybe to walk is a function, to speak is a function, and so on and so forth. So these are the methods. So if a function is written inside a class, we call it a method. So that is how it differentiates when you know that when they say method, you know that that method is coming from a class. Right? Like when we did object and array methods, that shows you that those methods we are calling that the pop, the shift, unshift, push, include, all those things are methods. All right, they are inside a class, a particular class JavaScript has written on array methods. All right, I hope that makes sense. The next one is inheritance. Inheritance. So one class can inherit from another. So this is what I'm just saying. So we can have a super class and have another class that inherits from another. This is an example. So we can have the animal class. So this animal class is having a function that all of them moves, right? So I just console log moving. That means all animals move. It's a normal feature for every animal. So when I want to create an animal from this class, this is a general animal, right? So I can want to create a separate animal from this, a very specific animal, call it dog. And I'm extending, so this is a keyword to inherit. Use the keyword extend. When you create the subclass, use the keyword extend. What is it extending? It's extending this superclass animal. You can still extend to any other class you want to inherit. So maybe for instance, user, I can extend to user. What it means that whatever that is working here will be available here. So if I instantiate this dog and say dog.move move method, it will start moving. Because I have extended this. Hope that makes a little bit sense. So if I instantiate this dog, I repeat myself, since I am extending from animal and I say that animals move, right? I've extended animal to dog, meaning everything inside this animal will be present in dog. So I don't have to repeat this dog function again in my dog class. So I can just say dog.move function. It will start moving because I already extended animal. I mean extend whatever, everything inside this class will be present in this dog class. Remember when we said about modifiers? If this move is private, if it's private, it will be only available on this animal. I won't be able to extend it. But if it's protected, it will be available just for this both of them, these two that is extended. But if it's public and I can access it anywhere, don't I'm not restricted. I hope that makes sense. That's for the inheritance. So that is kind of the basic for the class. So we talk about the asynchronous programming. What is asynchronous programming? Before I proceed, I hope there is no question on this class so far, Danny. Any question? And are you still
No,
with me?
from my end, so
Okay, no question from your end.
I don't
That's
have
good.
any question
Perfect.
from you. Yeah.
All right, so let's proceed. All right. So what is asynchronous programming? Like I said, also have asynchronous. That means definitely there's synchronous, right? That's what it means. But this asynchronous to exist, there is always a synchronous. Just like the opposite in meaning. All right. So code that runs. So what is asynchronous program? These are codes that run without blocking execution. So I will explain this thing in a very real life scenario. So you have seen um, maybe you're accessing a page, for instance, let me use it this way, and you try to download a particular file. While downloading that file, you notice that you are still able to do other things. That download is working around the background. Meanwhile, you are able to access another thing, maybe watch a movie while waiting for it, do other things. You can see that many operations are occurring at a time without anyone disrupting anyone. Them will keep working simultaneously. They work together without breaking, without blocking. No one is blocking each other. So that's what we mean by asynchronous, which is actually what we always recommend, unless there's a very strict rule and you want to write synchronous programming. So this is useful for API calls when you are calling an API, right? You don't want your code to stop when calling API because most time it takes some seconds before it returns a result, a response. You don't want your full web or application to stop waiting for the call to finish before you continue. That will slow down everything. So it's useful for API calls, file operations when you are trying to access files within your system, timers. All right. So there are some things you might be using. You set timer. This one have to finish maybe next 30 seconds before it start. So they keep running without depending on that. But if it's synchronous, it must finish. Your code will just will be pending. You won't be able to do anything until one finish because it runs line by line. So synchronous versus asynchronous. Excuse me for a minute. This was asynchronous. So this is the same thing I just explained. So I'll just run through it. So for the synchronous, it runs line by line. That means one line. This if I'm running this man must finish before this next line will work. Just like your bank your POS machine. Imagine that I can remember some years back where you will see a long queue on the machine. Alright, that means everybody cannot operate that at the same time. One person at a time. You can see that is a typical example of synchronous operation, right? It runs line by line. First person after doing this transaction, he leaves. The next person comes, right? But imagine the case that you have a limited something that everybody can just come on, cut in their car without being on a queue, and everybody without blocking everybody, we are doing the same operation. You can see that is kind of how easier that will be. So for the asynchronous, I've explained that this runs on the background, non-blocking. So everything keep running without blocking anything. So we're focusing on this asynchronous. So under this asynchronous, we discuss the promises. The promises. So this is kind of the older way of how they use asynchronous before they upgraded it async. We are now instantiating it, providing this parameter. You can see that it has a constructor, definitely. So we say a function is returns, the constructor returns a function here. You have this inside this function is either we are taking two parameters, either is resolved or rejected with an arrow function. So then we can access a variable. So this is where we actually use it. If it's successful, you call the resolve and assign something. And if it's rejected, you call the reject and assign it. So this is kind of the older way how we use asynchronous function. Alright, so you can use to define whatever program, or maybe for API call, I can call this resolve and say reject. Then I will now call my put up my API, say once it's successful, resolve and value, else reject it and throw an error. It keeps running in the background without disrupting any operation. Then this dot then and dot catch goes together with this promise. That means the promise must has been defined. And I will now call the promise, which I also instantiated here, which is the promise object here now. I call it and I will use dot then. This dot then is just like saying if it's successful, something with the whatever result we have in this result will be printed. Else catch, if there is an error in this reject, the catch will get it. It is visible in our code. Right. So maybe in our next class before moving, this will be the last topic in the TypeScript. So I will find out a way to make a mini project for all these things maybe by next week. We'll make place a hand on code so this get more familiar with this. Right. So while upgrading, this is the older way using the dot then and dot catch. Now have the async and await. So this is a cleaner way of to handle promises. So we don't have to write so many long code to do that. Right. JavaScript has made it easy for us using this async and await. Right. So how do we make a function asynchronous? So just have to assign this keyword at the beginning. So if you are using arrow function, you assign it at the front of the variable or the function name. But if you are using the keyword function, this async must be at the beginning. Right? You say async, meaning short form for asynchronous. Async, then the function. So these two works together. Without async, await will not work. So if you are calling await in your project and you need to asynchronize the function, there will be an error. Both of them works together. Both of them works together. So the await will never work without the async. Not that. It's that. So let me show you. Yes, this is what I'm looking for. How we use the await. So I create the async function and let's say get data. Maybe this data I'm fetching it from an API. Alright. So I will say let result await function. So what happens here is that this keyword will keep waiting in the background while this fetch data is being fetched, whatever, maybe on the cloud or anywhere is being fetched. Right? If you take 1 minute to keep fetching within the background, other codes you are writing on here, under here, we keep running. It will not disrupt it. If I have a log here, maybe another line here that say maybe log I am waiting, and I say let result await this. If this will take 30 seconds, once I call this function get data, the last one here will run, which is I am waiting. Before it now wait for this man. Whenever it's finished, the result will now run. So it doesn't stop my code at all. Alright, so that's the beauty for this async function. So the another important topic here is the try and catch. So this also works with the async. It's just like when we say dot then and dot catch. This is what these things are representing, the try and catch, or work with the async. So as you make this as one of the function and you write the try, that means it's always good to use this whenever you are doing anything asynchronous. It's always good to use this because on this try section, you have to put in your code. So that if there is an error here within this try, it does not stop your code. That is the essence of this. Alright, if there is no error, it does not stop your code. It will only just move to the catch and just display the error while other things keep running. That is the beauty of this try and catch. That's what we call it an error handling. And this is error handling. Alright, I think that will be all for this until we do a practical this topic. Any question? Is a question time.
No question from me, sir. But there are other people here too. So I don't know if they are.
Okay. That makes sense. That it's well understood. Well understood. Alright. So without wasting much time, we'll move on. So the key takeaway for this course is class. So these classes are structured and usable, just like we have seen. To instantiate an object. Then you have an access modifiers which control the data. Right? We have the async, which is a non-blocking operations. The promises, async, and await handles delays. Is exactly what we have discussed. Right. So I have an assignment. The assignment says you should build a mini system. So you create a class user, add property name, email, right? And with the method get details. So what this details is getting, whenever I click on this get details, I should be able to get the name and the email of that property, of that class, or the object you have instantiated on this. Right? So if I use this method, whenever I call get details, I should get the properties, details of the properties, or the properties of that object you have instantiated from your class. To create async function to stimulate fetching users, right? To use timeout. So this is a built-in function timeout from JavaScript. So use it to do timeout, a delay. Alright. So use fetch function, then set a timer so that it has a delay before running and you can still be doing other things. So use async and await and try and catch to do this. I hope this assignment is understood, and any issue on this I can explain.
I have a question about that set timeout. Like,
Yeah.
how do we use it in? I have a question about the set timer. How do we use it in the async await
Okay.
function?
It's just a function. All right. This sounds like a function. So let me see if I can share my code. Let me show you something. I have a JavaScript code. Yeah.
You go to profile settings applications and just only get notifications when you get a DM and no other notifications.
Hold on. Let me open up our.
The second is send later. When you're sending a DM, you can long press that send paper airplane icon, and then you have the option to send something later. Great for businesses and great.
On behalf of everyone that's become their families or their friends'
Set up
personal
this.
tech support, I just want to say, I don't know how to fix that. I'm just gonna look it up. When you send me an error code, I don't know what that code means either. You know who does? A random guy on Reddit that answered the question 6 years ago. Look for him. I can tell you things like power
All right,
cycle
are we?
install and reinstall the software, check your debug LED,
Who's this?
reset the CMOS. But when
To
it
stop my
comes to
sharing and share the entire screen.
I just want to say,
Oh,
I don't know how to
that's
fix
awesome.
that. I'm
Okay,
just
sorry
gonna
I came very, very, very late.
I don't know what
Huh?
that code means either. You know,
Okay, sorry I came late, so I was really excited.
answered the question 6 years ago.
The class already ended. I just in the summer. All right,
No, no,
confirm
no.
it, Casimir.
I've been on the class for close to an hour now. If I'm not mistaken.
Ah,
Yes.
I didn't notice. Maybe it's from error from my end then. Danny, can you see this code?
Yes, sir.
Danny, confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
All right. Good. So I will create a normal function to show you something. So let's assume an arrow function. I say this is user. and I
Enjoy
say
instant funds with one-touch
async.
borrowing. Log in
This
to
is an
the
arrow
OPay
function.
app now. Your
I
exclusive
just
deal
say
ends soon.
arrow, right? Something like this. Then I want to call a user. Maybe let's say user. So let's assume what I'm fetching here is a function. I can have maybe another function here, fetch data, for instance, or you can just use the await for it. I can say await, or let me just create the function. I want to show you. Without using the asynchronous, though I've used asynchronous here as to indicate that I'm good to go to use the try and catch or the await here. So imagine I did not set an await function here or to wait for this man within using the normal new method of the promise on this. What happens here is that since this code runs line by line, this code has a delay, a timer of 50,000 milliseconds, which is 50 minutes, right? It will wait for 50 minutes before this code will run, which means other codes I have here, we keep waiting for him. So it will wait for this code to complete before others to run. But if I use the asynchronous and await, async and await on this, if this one will run on the background, other ones will run, all this one will run, other codes will run without, then whenever this one is completed, it will now run on, it will run. So that is what the question is saying. Danny, I hope that is clear.
Yes, sir. To some extent, yes.
Huh?
Yes, sir. It's clear to some extent.
An extent.
Yes, it's clear to some. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Say to an extent. So that is what you're saying. I create an async function, simulate fetching user, right? So when fetching a user, you use a set timer. So give a delay, maybe 10 seconds on the user and continue doing other things below it. It does not delay and try to run it using this async and await. In the front of this command, when defining it, you must indicate await when stimulating this fetching user. To wait at the background. So you can use the try and catch for it. They can actually say try and catch here. So you can say try, all right, and put the whole of the successful code or your code in the try. All right, in the try, and the catch you can just log the error whenever there is error. Just log error, so on and so forth. All right, I hope that makes sense. So we'll be coding something in our next class. We'll be coding. So I've done a lot of theory. So I'll try to, even though it is assignment I've given, so we can work it together and see if there's a question for us. All right. Chiundo, for me, I should ask you.